In ancient Athens, around 300 BCE, a man named Zeno stood beneath the painted colonnade of the Stoa and planted a quiet revolution into human thought. His words carried no sword, yet they cut deeper than steel. "Most of what destroys you," he said, "is not even real." He was a man remade by catastrophe. Once a wealthy merchant, Zeno's ship had sunk, his fortune swallowed by the sea. But from that wreckage emerged something extraordinary. Stripped of possessions, he began searching not for new trade routes, but for truth. He studied the Cynics and their radical simplicity. He listened to the students of Plato and their elegant reasoning. And from the collision of these worlds, he built a new one, a philosophy that would outlive empires. That philosophy was Stoicism, a system born not from comfort but from loss. It began with one man learning to rebuild from nothing, and it asked the same question that still haunts humanity today. What remains within our power when everything else collapses? The Stoics answered with clarity. They divided the universe itself into two realms, what depends on us and what does not. This distinction, what the Greeks called hemin, became the axis of an entire worldview. Centuries later, Epictetus, once a slave and later a revered teacher, would crystallize it. Some things are up to us, and others are not. Our judgments, our desires, our choices, our responses, those are within our control. Our bodies, our reputations, the opinions of others, the events of fate, those are not. In that gap, they said, lies freedom itself. It is the space between stimulus and response, the narrow bridge between what happens and what we make of it. For the Stoics, this was not abstract theory, it was survival. Zeno had lost a ship, Epictetus had survived chains, Marcus Aurelius governed an empire in chaos. All of them discovered that the one domain no tyranny could conquer was the inner citadel of the mind. But this philosophy was never gentle. It demanded radical responsibility. If the world cannot be controlled, then the self must be. That truth was both liberation and burden. Freedom, yes, but freedom without excuse. Even its founders disagreed on its meaning. The early Stoics, Zeno, Cleanthes, Chrysippus, left behind only fragments. Their words survived through the Romans, filtered through power and politics. Stoicism became the language of empire. Seneca, who preached simplicity, owned 500 ivory tables. He advised emperors, wrote of accepting death, and yet profited from the suffering of debtors. Marcus Aurelius, Philosopher-King, ruled justly and wrote of compassion, yet commanded wars in the name of empire. Epictetus, once enslaved, taught freedom of the mind while his lectures were preserved by a Roman consul. This is the paradox of Stoicism's survival, a philosophy born in ruin, sustained by rulers. It endured not because it resisted power, but because it could live within it. Yet its influence is undeniable. Modern psychology owes a debt to it. Cognitive behavioral therapy, developed by Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, translates Stoic insight into science. It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Challenge the thought and the emotion changes. The same principle that once steadied a slave now guides clinical therapy. When anxiety consumes the modern mind, Stoicism offers a method. Write the fear down, ask what lies within your control, and let the rest fall away. 2,000 years later, the ancient technique still works, but this very usefulness hides a danger. In an age obsessed with optimization, Stoicism has become another tool for productivity. CEOs quote Marcus Aurelius in boardrooms. Athletes tattoo Epictetus on their ribs. A philosophy once meant to free the mind now often polishes the machinery of modern life. The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good, and everything else, wealth, health, even life, is indifferent. It sounds noble until one realizes what it implies, that suffering itself is morally neutral, that hunger and injustice occupy the same category as fortune and fame. But Stoicism also held a deeper truth. Virtue, they they said, included justice. Humanity was one body, one rational order, every person a citizen of the same cosmic city. This sense of kinship, what they called oikiosis, expanded outward from self to family, to the entire cosmos. Here lay their great tension: how to care deeply while remaining unshaken, how to fight for justice without surrendering to rage, how to accept fate without becoming its accomplice. Marcus Aurelius, weighed down by war and duty, wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Yet thought is never created in a vacuum. Trauma, poverty, imbalance, these shape the mind as surely as weather shapes stone. What happens then when the quality of thought is bound by the quality of circumstance? The Stoics would answer that choice remains, that even in bondage, one's moral will, proheresis, cannot be taken. Epictetus walked with a limp from a master's cruelty, yet still declared, "No man can take away your freedom to choose how you respond." It is one of philosophy's most empowering and most devastating claims, for it leaves no refuge in excuse. Freedom exists only in the self, or not at all. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and he was right. The mind invents disasters more often than it endures them. But there is a shadow version of that wisdom, the way it can be twisted. You're only suffering because you think wrong. You chose to be upset. Change your perspective, as if pain were a failure of philosophy, as if grief could be cured by logic. The Stoics prepared for pain through premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined loss, illness, and death to strip them of terror. Modern neuroscience would call this exposure therapy, yet even they knew the cost. To rehearse grief is to feel it twice. To defend against loss is already to lose something. Still, they never preached numbness. Stoicism did not seek the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. They distinguished pathe, the destructive passions, from eupathie, the good emotions born from reason, joy in virtue, caution in danger, goodwill toward others. Their goal was not apathy, but clarity, to feel without drowning. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not demanding control, but offering relationship. Power over the mind meant understanding it, befriending it, guiding it as one might a restless animal toward peace. And that, perhaps, is why Stoicism never dies. It reappears whenever civilization feels overwhelmed, whenever people drown in information, obligation, and chaos. It whispers, "Focus on what is yours to do. Let go of the rest." In an age of algorithms and constant distraction, this whisper feels like salvation. But it also raises an unsettling possibility. Perhaps Stoicism thrives not because it resists the system, but because it fits it too well. It creates citizens who can endure anything, who adapt endlessly, who mistake endurance for freedom. Or perhaps the opposite is true, that Stoicism remains one of the most subversive ideas ever conceived. That to teach a person their worth is independent of wealth, status, or power is to make them ungovernable. Maybe both are true. Maybe the same philosophy that liberates can also domesticate, depending on who wields it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Wipe it out now, the thing itself, or your opinion about it." Seneca reminded, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Each face the same truth. The universe is indifferent. Loss is certain. Death is universal. And yet, within that inevitability, they found the seed of freedom. That is the paradox of Stoicism, the balance between control and surrender. And so the question remains, echoing across centuries. If a person could truly separate what is theirs to carry from what is not, laying down every false burden, every imagined disaster, every borrowed sorrow, what would remain?